Welcome back to Self-Help. Today we're going to be talking about this idea of how does mindfulness actually help us? So there are a lot of different therapies that use mindfulness. ACT and DBT are two that come to my head right off the bat. There are even some like mindfulness-based stress reduction that have like mindfulness as the core element of the entire therapy. So a lot of scientific research has gone into mindfulness and its effects, and therapists all over the country and all over the world are using it with their clients because it actually has some pretty specific benefits. And we're going to talk about that. So when I explain it to my clients, I usually will use a whiteboard and I'll draw a line across the board, and it's this little timeline, so I'll have the arrows on the end. And then on the left side, I'll put past, and on the right side, I'll put future. And then I'll have a point right in the middle that says now or present moment. I explain that a lot of issues that people face, especially with depression, anxiety, can be mapped out on this timeline in this way. So depression usually is in the past, right? A lot of times depressive symptoms include like a lot of rumination and racing thoughts about things that have happened or things that bug them or make them sad, regrets that they have, guilt, all these different things, all these things that have already happened, and it's just replaying over and over in their head. And so people who are really stuck in the past experience a lot of those depressive symptoms like the sadness, lack of energy, lack of motivation, things like that. Switch it then to the other side, which is the future, and that's where you get your anxiety. So people are having a lot of thoughts and a lot of worries about things that are in the future because they actually haven't happened yet. They might happen, they might not happen, and just the thought of this uncertainty or like all these what ifs, that is all in the future because it hasn't happened already, it's not happening now, so it's in the future. So we really get the issues when we're either in the past or we're in the future. And so that's why when we anchor ourselves to the here and now, or the present moment, that's where we're able to pull ourselves out of these different extremes. And chances are the present moment, is just, it is what it is. There's nothing in the environment that is threatening to you, like actually causing you life-threatening danger.
Yeah.
And there's nothing happening to you that's like really sad, like you're not getting broken up with, you're not failing a test or anything. Like what is happening in the here and now, chances are it's not those two things. Unless it's those two things, and at that point, it's totally okay to react that way.
Yeah,
to it, right?
Absolutely.
Like that's normal. If a bear came into the room right now, we wouldn't be like, oh wait, how do I need to respond to this?
Yeah.
And
You
what
step
should
away
I
from
do?
this thought. I'm scared. I need to stop for a second.
Exactly.
Wait, yeah.
I'm going to check in with my thoughts and see how I'm processing the bear's presence. No,
my arm's being ripped off.
Right, we would freak out and we would try to escape whatever way we could. I would probably use you as a human shield.
It's okay. You've got more meat
I would
on
survive. Me. Yeah, exactly. I got a family to feed. So
utilitarian. I like it.
There you go. Yeah, always thinking. That's really why, and I use the timeline because it's a really good visual for where we meet in the here and now is where you want to be, because you see what the issues are if you're in the past or if you're in the future.
Yeah, it's a common thing where, you'll have shower arguments. I'm sure this happens to a lot of people.
Shower arguments.
Where either you're thinking about arguing with someone or you had an argument with someone in the past and you replay it in the shower. For something that happens to me. Does that happen to you?
Oh yeah, no, I'm
So you're
laughing
thinking like, if only I would have said this to my brother, or if only if I said this to my friend that I just, was trying to prove a point. Like, I remember all these facts now, right? The time to argue with them was at the moment. Granted, I have issues with arguing in general a lot of the time, but
Lawyer.
the time to be, in that moment was at that moment. And you sitting in bed or standing in the shower thinking about it doesn't really help anything. And so there's a time to be present, and that's already passed. If you're worried about something in the future, I think there's a certain level of stress that can be good, where you're kind of worried about something enough that you'll plan for it and prepare. But it gets to a point where it's just not helpful to worry so much about those things. And so, yeah, it's great to get into the mindset of just being in the present and doing the best you can in whatever you're doing. Just giving your best and not worrying about the past or the future. Yeah. Completely agree.
So something you said sparked another thought, which is having this attitude of determining what is helpful or unhelpful. And I think that's a lot better, or a healthier way to label different experiences, inner experiences more specifically, because instead of thinking like, oh, this is good or bad, you're able to say, okay, is this helping me or is this not helping me?
Yeah.
And then leaving it at that. A lot of times I'll meet with clients and they'll say that their goal for therapy is they just want to be happy, right? And the problem is that I notice that a lot of times they're looking for happiness either in the past or in the future.
Yeah.
Like things that haven't happened yet, and they're saying, I'll be happy when I get that new job or when I have this new car. And it's always contingent upon things that may happen in the future. Or they're thinking, about happy times in the past and saying, oh, I want to go back to that time or when I was with that person.
Nostalgia. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. So what I like to do is I like to explain how happiness is like a butterfly. You can imagine, if you're outside and you see this butterfly, if you whip out a butterfly net and you're running around and trying to chase it and trying to catch it with this butterfly net, the more the butterfly is going to fly away from you. The more it's going to try to, float away and get away from you.
Escape, yeah.
Exactly. On the flip side is if you were to just, lay out a blanket on the grass and just kind of sit there, look at the trees, observe the different, smells and the breeze and the scenery that's around you, chances are the butterfly will come, fly around you, and then, come land on your shoulder for a second. And it's not that you are chasing after it, because the more you chase after it, the more it's going to fly away from you. But if you are able to just sit in the present moment, be engaged in what is going on around you, then happiness really oftentimes is just a byproduct.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, what I was thinking about while you were giving that analogy was kind of how I was, from a little kid to now, where I'll kind of think, at the next stage, that's when I really will have made it. I'll feel like an adult, I'll feel happy, I'll feel put together. I remember in high school, I'd look at people in college and be like, oh man, they really have it done. Their lives are going really well. They have, girlfriends and jobs, and that's awesome. And then when I was in college, I didn't feel any different. And I kept thinking about the future and worried about my career and who I was going to be with, and where I was going to be living, and all those kinds of things would come into my mind. And I'd be constantly worried and just kind of thinking like, oh, eventually I'll be happy. Eventually I'll be able to, be content with my situation. And what's funny is every time I went through another phase, and it, even from when in high school when my family moved to Washington, D.C., I was really excited to do that. But once I made it there, I kind of realized, you know what, I was really happy there too. So I was really nostalgic about where I used to live before we moved. And I just realized that I wasn't really taking full advantage or really being aware of how happy and how grateful how wonderful things were when I was in high school. And it wasn't until after everything happened that I realized that. It helped motivate me to really be present in the moment, because I realized that, happiness is right here. I just have to be content with my situation. And there'll obviously be really difficult times and really hard things that happen to us, but the more we pay attention to the present moment, the more content we'll be, the more happy we'll be, because we're not worried about it.
Yeah, I really like that. And I wish I could just take what you said and implant it into all my clients' heads. And
I wish it would implant in my head really well too, because it doesn't work all the time.
Right, it takes practice.
It does.
That's an important thing to remember. It just takes practice, and I don't think really anyone's ever perfect at it. And
No.
That's kind of the fun thing about it, is that it's always something you can work on.
Yeah, there's still times where I get upset or get angry or get really nostalgic or think about the future too much and get concerned about law school or random things out of my control. So no one's perfect at it, but the more you practice, the more you kind of realize that being present is really, really nice.
Yeah. The next video is going to break down the mindfulness cycle, and it's also going to give you some information on how you can know that you're doing it correctly. Until next time.